Before I begin this review, I would just like to give a quick shout out to Austin Putnam and Mothman Jones, who hosted the Next Gen Film Awards for this year, and I actually got to participate in presenting a category, so go check out both parts. But if you want to see me, I'm in part 1, but I would really suggest you check out both because Austin and Mothman worked very hard on this show, and I'm so glad to be a part of it, and it was a really good show, so check them out, subscribe to them, and let's carry on with the review for Power Rangers. Power Rangers is the reboot to the original Mighty Morphin Power Rangers show, which launched a bunch of other shows and a couple other movies, and this one of course focuses on 5 teenagers who through some circumstances meet up where they find these 5 power coins that are turning them into something different, more superhero-like. And when they go underground, they find this alien ship, and they discover that they're supposed to be Power Rangers, these legendary warriors that are supposed to stop evil. For example, Rita Repulsa, played by Elizabeth Banks, who just resurfaced because they found the coins, and now she wants to destroy the world. When they announced that they were making a Power Rangers movie, first of all, I was relieved that Michael Bay didn't get his hands on it and was making it at Paramount, because we know how that turned out. But another thought I had was, why do I even care about a Power Rangers movie? Because the original Mighty Morphin Power Rangers show is just fluff. Like, it is so corny and cheesy that I can barely get through the intro without laughing my ass off. I mean, literally tears every time I watch the intro of that show. It is hysterical to me, and the remaining episode to follow, it's still funny. So when people are going, it's gonna be the dark and gritty Power Rangers, no, it's just they're trying to make it a movie instead of what the show was. So I really didn't know how this movie was going to turn out, if it was just going to be over the top or if they were going to go a more serious route. I was interested to see what the director was going to do because he did Project Almanac, which I thought was a decent film. And I walked out of this film very surprised, honestly. For a movie, it's a decent movie, but for a Power Rangers movie, it's actually pretty good. The main reason why I really liked this movie was that it focused on these 5 kids who have a lot going on character-wise. It focuses a lot on the characters' growth and how they interact as a team, trying to get to know each other and work together as a team. And I thought that was really good, and also the actors are actually really strong here. I was a little concerned that these actors were just not going to care about playing these characters, especially since they got a pop artist to play the Yellow Ranger, Becky G, but they actually have a lot of dramatic weight to them, including Becky G as Trini, where if you've seen the news is reporting that her character is gay, and this is not a La LeFou Beauty and the Beast thing. They actually do address it, but it's actually used for character growth. But it's actually used to get to know the character more, to understand this character, why they're acting a certain way, pretty much, and I really appreciated that. And I think Becky G, for being a pop artist, was actually pretty good. Usually when singers transfer into the movies, they're not too good, but she was actually pretty good. Even Ludi Lin playing Zack, when I saw him in the trailers, I was like, he's just going to be the cool guy who has a lot of cool one-liners. And he is playing the more cool personality of them, but there is more going on character-wise with him that I really appreciated. Like, there's a scene where they're at a campfire and they're all kind of talking, and that was like my favorite character scene in the whole movie, honestly. There are 3 standouts in my mind in this movie. The first one being Dacre Montgomery playing Jason. I thought he did a really good job in this film. I'm thinking that he's going to become more popular later on because he did a really good job for this film, what was going on with his character. And I like how he interacted with the character Kimberly, played by Naomi Scott in this film, who they introduced a character element that honestly kind of surprised me, that I didn't expect for them to kind of bring up in a movie like this, but they did, and I think it actually worked in its favor. My favorite Ranger, though, has to be RJ Cycler as Billy, who was my favorite. He was the funniest of them, and even in the original show, Billy wasn't really that funny and failed to convince me that he was a nerd, but in this movie, he convinced me that he was a nerd, and he was actually funny, the complete opposite of the show. And I also really found it neat that they put his character on the autistic spectrum. Like, that was just really cool for me, seeing them do that. But he really was, like, the most relatable thing of this film. And also another thing I really liked is that this movie is actually pretty funny. Like, the majority of the humor comes from Billy either I'd say he's more the comedic relief, and he's really funny, but the other people have some funny lines too. Some of them are a little corny, like straight out of Power Rangers corny, but for the most part, I think the humor actually played a really big part in my enjoyment of it, along with the characters themselves. I mean, even Alpha 5, who's famous for being like the most annoying robot ever, was actually pretty funny in this movie. I think Bill Hader was the perfect choice to voice him, honestly. I think he brought a lot of his own personality to Alpha 5, which made him funnier. And even Bryan Cranston as Zordon, I think he was the perfect choice, like face-wise, to play Zordon, I guess. And he's not just the face in the wall, there's a little bit more character-wise going on that I wasn't expecting at first, but I really appreciated in the long run. And this movie makes a ballsy choice, which is both appreciated by me, but a little disappointing at the same time, and this is where we're gonna start to segue. Their ballsy choice was that a lot of the Power Rangers thing you want to see, the suits in action and fighting thing, and Zords, the cool stuff that you want to see Power Rangers-wise, a lot of that is crammed into the third act, and like basically the last 30 minutes, and the first hour 20 to 30 is actually more character growth and them training, trying to get to know each other more, which was actually pretty surprising because in a movie like this, like Transformers or Ninja Turtles, a lot of those things are just sprinkled throughout the movie. And in this movie, the main Power Rangers aspect in the title is really more near the end, so we get more time to spend with these characters, which I actually thought was a good way for the studio to show that they actually cared about the characters in this film. They actually gave a crap about the product they were making. But it's a little disappointing when you get to that third act, mainly because it's very sloppily put together, I think. There are some cool moments there, there's some fun action bits and funny lines going on, but for the most part, if you know the structure of a Power Rangers episode, like when they do get in action, they do this, then this, then this, and this, you know, the way they kind of organize that in the third act, structure-wise, for it to have a flow, it didn't really fit. And this movie isn't immune to storytelling flaws, because earlier on, before you actually get into more of the training and the character growth, the way they kind of lead into these 5 characters meeting up at this one site, I thought was kind of rushed. Like, they spent more time on like 2 characters, but they just kind of rushed the other 3. And I think a lot of kids that want to see all the cool Power Ranger stuff are going to be really mad at this movie, because a lot of what they're waiting for is near the end, and they got to sit through a lot of non-Power Ranger stuff going on. There's still the elements of Power Rangers, but as far as the actual cool suits that they like to see, they are pretty cool suits. That's all later on in the film, so I'm imagining a lot of kids will probably not like this movie as much, and it'll be more adult Power Rangers fans who appreciate this film. Speaking of Power Ranger fans and disappointment, Goldar in this movie, if you couldn't tell, it's not King Kong in gold armor, it is a liquid gold monster that is trampling around this small town. And I was thinking at first, okay, it's not the ape with the armor, okay, maybe that's fine. They're trying to make it a little bit more serious than normal, so I can kind of buy it. But then they do something so silly that it was straight out of Power Rangers. Like, the product placement is so goofy, so corny, that the movie, it just felt like they fully embraced how silly and ridiculous this product placement was, because it was integrated into the plot. Like, the plot mainly focused around, like, this product placement. I can't spoil what happens. All I will say is, Krispy Kreme. Just go see the movie and see what happens with Krispy Kreme in this movie. But I was just watching that, laughing my butt off. It was one of the funniest things ever. And it just felt like they completely embraced the kind of tone that this movie had and was supposed to have. But then you see Goldar and you're just like, well, how come Goldar can't be a monkey in gold armor if you have this ridiculous product placement that is so ridiculous? And the CGI for it was pretty good, and the Megazord itself looked alright, and the putties were pretty good, but the miniature Zords, just the regular Zords, I thought those looked like toys placed in front of a green screen, honestly. It looked kind of fake. Can't say the visuals were just straight up awful, but there are just some moments where it's like, ugh, that's definitely a green screen right there. And my final issue with this movie is Rita Repulsa. Now, I like Elizabeth Banks, and for the first part when her character is introduced, I was like, okay, this could be really creepy, could be really sinister, but then she starts to overact, which in an over-the-top Power Rangers movie would have been fine, but the first hour, 20, 30 minutes was kind of serious, because characters have serious things going on with their lives, and the actors are taking it very seriously. Then we cut to Rita Repulsa acting pretty much like anything to come out of the Power Rangers show, and I was like, this really doesn't work well as a clashing of tones. There's definitely some tonal clashes, I guess, near the third and second acts, but I thought Elizabeth Banks did a good job playing a more sinister, creepy Rita at first, so I think if she had kept that up, then I think her character would have worked a lot more. However, for the Power Rangers movie that it is, I surprisingly had a better time with it than I originally anticipated, and if this movie does well at the box office, I would honestly like to see what other movies they'd have planned, especially since they had that mid-credit scene, which isn't the worst mid-credit scene ever, it's just fine. Even after that, I was still curious to see what else they planned on doing, if they could get the opportunity to keep going. So surprisingly, I'm gonna give Power Rangers a B-. I thought this movie, for a Power Rangers movie, much better than I think anyone could have anticipated. The characters were really good, and Alpha 5 and Zordon were really fun, and the humor was really good, carried a lot of that movie. I just think the third act really does stumble by a lot, and I think some character treatments like Goldar and Rita just weren't that good. But overall, if you're skeptical at first, or if you thought this movie was gonna suck, I'd say go in with an open mind, give it a chance. Because remember, I went in not knowing how this movie was going to turn out, and I walked out pleasantly surprised. But if you've seen Power Rangers, leave in the comments below what you thought of it, and as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.